The story begins with a lot of people gathered and all in one voice discussing the latest news that Count Jansel has sent Princess Ariel Aegis a letter of proposal. A real sensation, rumors of which spread in a matter of seconds. Naturally, all the girls have been trying to get his attention for many years. Do not miss any event, even if he was not called. The Count is so popular that his wife dreams of becoming every wife. Some even have it as the meaning of life. It is believed that if a guy talks to some girl even out of politeness, it means that the lady is prettier than all the others, and because of this, many people are offended. And meanwhile, no one can understand why he chose her. She is not from the duchy, and if he marries her, he will strengthen his ties with the north. No one can believe he's gotten this far. A wind with such a reputation wouldn't wash up north. The girl isn't from the best region, also has some peculiarities. She has enormous eyesight problems and is the eldest daughter of the Duchy of Aegis, which few people have heard of. When everyone is a little tired of waiting, appears one who instantly lifted everyone's spirits. The lady's frozen in one place, looking at him with huge eyes and do not believe that soon he will have a wife. People felt a very pleasant energy from him, which immediately spread throughout the hall. Everything became somehow brighter, more pleasant and beautiful. His smile really works wonders. Once you appear in society, as many smiles appear, all the bad things dissolve by themselves, as if they never existed. In his presence, it is not customary to be sad, to discuss something bad, to take offense, or to shout loudly. There is always harmony, no fuss and everything else. Romaldo Jansel, chief regent of the empire. He has always been and remained insanely polite. The guy greets all the girls. Each pays attention because he knows perfectly well how important it is for them. And also, he even remembers exactly those whom he meets for the first time, and when meeting necessarily addresses by name. He has elegant manners, and for all time, no one has not seen in him a single flaw. No wonder that his wife dreams to become everyone. Girls imagine him a wonderful husband and father, with whom a happy life in all areas is definitely ensured. They used to pay a lot of attention to his upbringing, and it shows. Romaldo is an amazing person, and there is probably no one in the whole empire who thinks badly of him. Meanwhile, one of the girls comes up to him. She did it on purpose so he would remember her best. She's so shy she even forgot to say hello. The girl is one of the few who sees him for the first time. She has heard how beautiful he is and came to see for herself. She admitted that she has been waiting for this meeting for a long time and paid a couple of compliments to him. She wanted so badly to touch him, to hear his voice and smell the unforgettable scent of perfume that she was momentarily confused and didn't even know how to continue the conversation. Naturally, he realizes this and takes it all in stride. Comes up with a few topics so he can talk for at least a few minutes and asks questions to get to know her better. It's understandable that everyone likes to tell something about themselves more than they like to listen to someone else, and of course the strategy worked. And when he kissed her hand as a courtesy, she was immediately envied by everyone around her. It was so beautiful that she wanted to capture it and keep the photo as a keepsake. Everyone was very worried that he must be incredibly busy and could hardly find time to attend the banquet. They began to thank him for such an honor and promised that they would not keep him long. If there were things to do, he could leave at any time and no one would be upset. Naturally, he couldn't keep silent and admitted that the only reason he had to cancel a couple of things was the arrival of someone very important to him. Princess Ariel Aegis is coming to the ball tonight. He reads that it is very important to meet her and one more time before the wedding, and not only him. It's very clear that the girls are not very happy to talk about it. They don't want to hear it, but at the same time, they can't do anything about it. And then the most interesting thing began. The guests imagined what their relationship will be, and did not hesitate to ask how he suddenly decided to marry a princess who will not even be able to see him, and is not quite suitable for the status, unlike some others who dream of being in her place. And only thanks to his upbringing, the guy was able to answer the question and at the same time, not to be rude, although he really wanted to. So if someone forgot, he decided to remind that as far as he knew, marriage is usually concluded for love, and everything else is not so important. The main thing is feelings, and if they are, it is enough. In the meantime, the girl is on her way up the road. She is very worried and tries to distract herself with the beautiful view from the window so as not to go completely crazy. She is already in the capital, and the closer she gets to her destination, the more her hands tremble. The very moment she was seconds away from getting out of the carriage, It looked like she was about to pass out, but luckily everything was fine and nothing happened to her. Naturally, she doesn't have the same perfect manners as the other girls here. She has a bit of a bent back, doesn't smile much, and is very much clueless about a lot of things. It would seem that on this beautiful day she should be the happiest person in the world. But the princess sees everything very blurry and in some gray shades, like this. No wonder with her vision problems she's in no mood to smile at such grayness. She can't even see people's faces clearly, and if the groom-to-be is standing in front of her, she won't recognize him. She's very afraid of being in a society that won't accept her or that will mock, laugh, and hate her. Ariel is more than sure that everyone around her will treat her too picky and condescending, as is usually the case in situations like this. Even here, you can already smell the stench of envy and disdain in the air. Even though she sees everything very blurry, in gray colors, the beauty around is conveyed even so. The princess is delighted and doesn't even know how she would react, being with good eyesight and being able to enjoy the bright colors around her. She liked the sounds of the fountains. There is even a special smell that cannot be described in words. It consists of the aromas of flowers, trees, and perfumes of aristocrats, all blended together to form a very pleasant first impression. The princess had heard that the Jansel family was very rich, but she didn't expect it to be so rich. Everything here speaks of it, every corner, every detail, and more. It was nice that the gentleman made sure she was greeted properly, guided, and made sure she was as comfortable as possible. The butler informed her that her husband was waiting for her and offered to escort her directly to him. It would be much easier and faster than if she had to go to him herself. Everything is thought out and she's insanely pleased with it. I wouldn't want to go in blind and ask people around me if they saw the groom or not. Ariel thanked the man profusely and said that if it wasn't too much trouble for him, of course that would be very nice. She couldn't do it at all without him. Plus, it's such a huge area that it's easier to get lost than it looks. She just follows him and doesn't worry about bumping or tripping on the steps somewhere. The man had been silent all this time, and she felt like talking on the way about this house. It seemed so huge and luxurious that it made her wonder how hard it was to manage and keep track of it all. The man didn't immediately understand why she was asking, and even hinted that he didn't really want to discuss it. And in fact, it was very simple. It was forbidden for them. It was not desirable to discuss the mansion. Moreover, its faults or what was about the household. And also, it's not very nice of her. It's not customary to discuss such topics in secular society because it's a private matter of the owner of this house. Even though she's his future wife, it's too early to talk about it. Ariel didn't know another rule of etiquette, that it's not customary to talk about your health problems at the first meeting. She started to tell how hard it was to live because of it, and that she had no idea if she would be comfortable here today or not. The man supported this conversation as best he could. He answered in neutral words so as not to keep silent and embarrass her. He noticed that Ariel is a modest girl. She hasn't complained about anything yet. The rest of them are just like that. They don't like it all the time. So he liked talking to her. He is glad that she will be the mistress of the house. 2 months ago was the very day on which she had accepted the Count's proposal, and today she had arrived for the sake of wedding preparations. They walked to the door where all the other guests were gathered. The butler knocked on the door and announced that he was not alone. The princess everyone had been waiting for so long was with him. She was very nervous at that moment, felt very awkward, and for a second even regretted that she had agreed to come on that day when there were a lot of people around and they would all look at her and look for her faults, which, in her opinion, were more than enough. She will now be approached by the master of this house and her future husband, Romaldo Gensel, the chief regent, head of the Senate, where all the nobles of the empire gather. He is one of the most respected men in the empire. Suddenly, the moment he started to come closer and closer, the princess was a little wary. She didn't expect to feel something very strange. She was frightened, for she could not mistake in any way. This man seemed suspicious to her, though she had not done so last time. Ariel tensed up a lot. She was starting to get confused and hoped it was a mistake. She felt a dark aura about him, though maybe the guy was just talking to someone he had picked up something bad from. She just hoped that was the case. She really didn't want to be disappointed in him or find out that the Count wasn't what he seemed at first glance. For her, color is something special. Usually the princess sees a monochrome world, without any colors, and color only appears on special occasions, such as now. He said hello, told her his name, said he was glad to meet her, and remembered that it seemed to be the first time they were seeing her alone together. Though she's shy, she's trying her best to look as confident as possible. The princess has no idea where she's looking, and of course, has shown the utmost courtesy. She needs to make a good first impression. A lot more depends on it than it seems. The guy is clearly looking out, and any mistake could cost too much. Even though it's all very serious, their first meeting, lots of people around, wedding soon, but the guy tries to do everything possible to make Ariel feel as comfortable as possible. He even talks to her as if they have been dating for several years and know each other very well. He knows how to make you feel comfortable, and he did it very well. The princess stopped feeling awkward and even relaxed. She has no tension. On the contrary, you want to spend as much time here as possible. Romaldo does not stop showering her with compliments. It is very important for him that she likes everything, because the hardest part is yet to come. They are waiting for jealous girls who will react to her like a bull to the color red. Ariel promised herself that she would ignore them. At least she would try to behave decently so she wouldn't stand out in this society of aristocrats, especially since she would soon be one of them. It turned out that she hadn't looked him in the eye the whole time. The guy thought she was just scared and didn't even consider that it wasn't on purpose. He hinted that he was not shy, although it sounded a little ugly. He didn't realize what he had said, but the princess forgave him. She pretended that everything was fine and didn't pay attention to it. She realizes that she's already made the decision to marry him, and there's nowhere to go. You have to learn to be restrained and respond politely even to something like that. In the whole empire, there will not be a man more kindred and nearer than Count Romaldo. Therefore, it is best to avoid conflict and make him see not a single fault in her. Meanwhile, very suspiciously, that red color hasn't gone anywhere. It's exactly the same in saturation as when they first met at the entrance to the house. Ariel doesn't know what that color is called. She just sees that it's different from the others. Most of the people she met were gray. Only a few were slightly different in color, but that was rare. To think that the first person of that color would be her future husband. She thought about it so earnestly that she had forgotten that he was looking at her. He even thought she was dissatisfied with something and asked her what was the matter. I had to explain that he had misunderstood her, and it was actually all due to stress. The girl admitted that she wanted him to like her and doubted very much that she could do that. Ariel has never seen other girls in person. She's been convinced since childhood that she doesn't look good, and everyone around her is much prettier, especially in the capital of the empire. To all this insecurity is added the most important problem, the lack of vision, because of which the girl always thought that to marry, it is a real miracle, which cannot even dream of, as if who would look at someone like her. I had to hear very often ridicule from other girls. She was taught from childhood that she is not the most beautiful, and with such appearance, it is better not to go out at all unnecessarily. It was said by both girls and guys. At a young age, such words are taken too seriously, and there was not even a thought of someone being wrong. And at that moment, she decided to be as honest with him as possible. She said what she had been hiding all this time, namely, that ever since she had stopped seeing she shouldn't be talking about it, but still, the princess was worried that if she became the count's wife, she would dishonor his family's name and honor. She still, to this day, feels like he could be away from her at any moment, and probably doesn't even know how to do that right now. Suddenly, the princess regretted having told him the truth, and sure he disliked it very much. The count was silent for a while, and then said it was a pity he had made her think so. So, asked not to even worry about it? Allegedly, the girl is very wrong and does not even realize how many beautiful things he sees in her. He explained that this marriage, his personal decision that he made after thinking about the pros and cons, and would not allow her or anyone else to say such a thing. Romaldo appreciates her sincerity, but at the same time, he wants to explain once and for all that this marriage is not out of pity. He really sees her as a beautiful girl who will only add to the honor and prestige of the family by becoming his wife. And also, this marriage will be consensual, and no one's opinion he does not care. If someone dares to offend his bride, very much regret it, and she can be sure of it. It's always been very important to him that his girlfriend feels the best and happiest in this world, and he will do everything possible and impossible to make that happen. It was very comforting to hear him say it, and realize that most likely this was a man who was really saying what he thought and had no intention of hurting her, much less letting someone else do it. Ariel promised that she would never worry about it again and would only trust his word from now on. He was very good and quick at calming her down, and in the meantime, she suddenly needed to go somewhere. It's weird because she doesn't have anyone else here to talk to besides him. The girl didn't say where she needed to step back, and he didn't ask a lot of questions and kept her personal boundaries intact. Meanwhile, since she was in his house and he was the master here, the princess remembered that it would not hurt to ask if she could go, and he at once allowed her to do so and did not forbid anything. I wonder where she's going, because at the very least she should have a chaperone with her, and this house is so huge that it's easy to get lost. In her case, he could follow her without trouble, though it would be on his conscience. He's not likely to do it. He's got plenty of other things to do. It was not difficult to get out of the room, but how to move further, a big problem. Anywhere there could be a descent or stairs, which is very dangerous. There are people born with defects. Some have smaller fingers, some have mutations and deformities. There is nothing horrible about it, but the public forgets about it, and the reason is simple. A child born with any abnormality has a chance to die while still in the mother's belly or immediately after birth, which is always a huge stress for the parents, which they have actually experienced. Her mom always wanted a healthy child, and was very upset when she found out that the girl had some problems and that no medication could cure them. The princess has always dreamed of living an ordinary life for just one day, without any restrictions, like all other people. The girl always thought about how many people don't even realize how lucky they are to be born the way they are. They can see, walk, and think about nothing, and that's a huge gift to be appreciated. The world is full of gray and black. Only occasionally meet people of bright color. Although, in fact, the girl's life was not always so gloomy. Once Ariel had a conversation with her mom, she warned that no one should be given the right to control their own destiny. And if you want happiness, you need to put this desire in the first place. Because if you think that the whole life will pass in only hardships, it will be so. Then the woman asked what her daughter really wanted, and she said she really wanted happiness, or at the very least, for them to always be together. Ariel loved her mom madly. She felt safe, loved, and the happiest with her. And it wasn't a lie. She really wanted to give smiles before she hated the whole world. The girl was learning to understand people and forgive them. But time after time she had wounded her own heart by trying to be humble and understanding, to no avail. Ariel has asked herself the same question many times, if she can be happy at all. Because maybe it was never written in her destiny. Up to this point, she thought she could do anything. But now, all hopes are just melting away. In this place, without family and support, things are already looking a little bit different than they should. It's time for the ceremony and there are still worries and doubts. If my mom had been there, things could have been completely different. She would love to hear her advice and talk to her a lot, just so she doesn't make a mistake and knows exactly if she needs it or not. The priest asks her if the girl agrees to be with her husband until death do them part. There was no other choice. So she immediately answered that yes, she does. At first, this man seemed gray to her, but gradually his color changed to yellow. And in those seconds, it was as if Ariel could feel how much more pleasant it was to be near him with me. Was incredibly relieved. The yellow color shows the warmth in his heart, and it's amazing that her well-being depends on that directly. She's very sensitive to other people's energy. Immediately afterward, the same question was put to the bridegroom, and he also, again thoughtful, answered that he was ready to take her as his wife, and yet, he was very serious. They were asked to stand facing each other and look intently into each other's eyes, part of the ceremony before they put their rings on their hands. It was very unusual to realize that once the wedding was over, Ariel would no longer carry the name Aegis and could only get it back if she broke up with him. Now she'll be Ariel Jansel, and one can only hope that all will be well. Her worries will not be justified and her husband will make her happy. It's a little strange, but he still has some red energy. The girl tries not to emphasize it and thinks about the fact that now she will have to live far away from home, far away from her family, literally from this day forward. The guy asked her to give his hand and touch her so gently that all doubts disappeared by themselves. He was as polite as possible and was very worried that everything would go well. At least those are his words she tries to believe. So far, there are no problems. Everything is calm and the ceremony is almost at an end. Meanwhile, the girl asked when she was on the estate if it would be possible to invite her mother in and specified that it was very important to her. Of course, he couldn't refuse her and replied that she could do it any time she wanted and next time you didn't even have to ask about it. But that wasn't the most interesting part. They started discussing what they would do after the ceremony. and Ariel didn't even notice how the guy was slowly starting to hint about something. There was an option to go to the sea. He told me that the sea was the same, but depending on where they stayed, there would be a completely different atmosphere. And after that, there was a phrase that came out a little bit, that in life he's very calm and gentle, but if you're alone in a room with him, it's completely different. It's like he's preparing her for something, warning her, and she can't say a word back because she's just not ready for it. And then he starts kissing her in front of everyone, and he's not as polite and careful as he used to be. It was as if he no longer noticed anyone around him and allowed himself what should normally remain between them, alone. Just a second later, the girl opens her eyes and realizes that it's like it was just a dream and nothing like that happened in real life. Became very curious about what it was, and more importantly, whether or not there had been a ceremony. She remembered everything so clearly that she doubted it could have been just a dream. Ariel did not hurry to get out of bed. She decided to think it over and remember when she fell asleep and what was going on at all. Obviously only one. She enjoyed talking to him about a seaside vacation. His gaze was breathtaking and overall left a very pleasant feeling. She can't forget the moment when she could be unashamed and show her feelings without embarrassment, some politeness or restraint. If the girl could only know whether they had a kiss or not, it would be much easier. It's very hard for her to think about it, though at the same time, insanely interesting and enjoyable. It lasted for about 5 minutes. Then it was as if she came to her senses and realized that her imagination had played out too much. She just needed to remember that it was a dream and nothing more. The only thing I don't understand is why she'd dream about it, since they haven't seen each other since their wedding day. Her dreams have always been very strange, and the thing is that she sees not only colors but also shapes, just like other people. The interesting thing is that sometimes these dreams are dreams that happen in reality just a couple days later. It's weird though. Usually Ariel sees something like this before something bad happens. I'm left to wonder what this particular dream could mean. Meanwhile, some assistant knocked on the door and asked if she could come in. She thought the mistress must have been awake long ago and wasn't afraid to knock so loudly. A few hours before, there had been a very important conversation among the staff, the head maid asking if anyone would like to be the new mistress's personal maid. And some responded that it would be easier if she brought her maid with her and they didn't have to add extra work to someone else's job. The woman is completely bewildered. She understands perfectly well that no one is happy about this news. But still, she realizes that this problem will have to be solved, and someone of them will definitely get a new duty. Ava asked everyone to listen carefully to everything she was about to tell them. Now, mistress, this is part of this estate. The woman understands that being her personal maid will not be easy, but ask them to watch their words and not to insult the lady. They all, as adults, should realize that no one chooses what features they will be born with. In order to find some compromise, she came up with the idea of asking to hire the newcomers and ask the others to focus on their duties. This was a small gift from her to them, and that was the end of the meeting. And suddenly, one of the newcomers raised her hand and said she could try to help, if of course they were interested in the offer. She doesn't have much experience, but she really wants to try and test what she can do. The girl's name is Violetta, and as a bonus for her courage, she was allowed to keep one position and nothing else but to help the mistress, especially since she wouldn't have time to do it, and of course Violetta is very happy. She was all set to have her hands full. But in the end, it turned out to be even better than she thought it would be. Eva asked her to stay here. She asked everyone else to leave. They are free and can do their work next. The woman reminded that, as she had said earlier, the job was very difficult, and one must understand what the girl might face. She replied that she had thought it over well and could not worry about her. She takes full responsibility and is ready to be punished if anything happens. Eva asked if Violetta had communicated with Mistress before, and it turns out the girl had helped her a few days ago in the morning. The maid noticed that the mistress was not very familiar with the manor, so she asked her many questions, and then Violetta understood so much. Ariel is incredibly polite and honest. She's very kind and probably shouldn't have any problems at all. The girl truly understands why everyone treats Mistress so badly. After all, she is the kindest person they have ever met. It seems to her that it's all about that strange superstition they say that if you touch a man without sight, you can lose it yourself. The superior replied that most of the maids here favored the count, and in such a situation, they were even more contemptuous of the mistress, knowing that he had found himself a chosen one. Violetta realizes that Count is an amazing person, but it's too much, and in fact, Ava totally agrees with her. She just doesn't like to talk about it in public. In the meantime, it had to be made clear that from today, the maid was to be responsible for the mistress and that her superior would tell her of her specific duties later on. She wished her luck and told her that the main thing was to do what she was told, not to make anything up and to be polite. Violetta is not afraid of the new job. She needs the money, so it was the only way to increase her salary a little bit, which will probably skyrocket very soon. At least she thinks so. And now, she will have to try and live up to Eva's expectations. Turns out she was the one who knocked on Ariel's door early in the morning just to introduce her and tell her that they'd be seeing a lot more of each other now. She said what decision was made today among the staff, and she would become her personal maid. At first, the girl was afraid. Her face even blushed. A lot of Mistress was calm and even a little happy. And then she confessed how good it was that Violetta had suggested herself, for the others had not shown much eagerness, and she was very much worried that she would become an empty place in the house. The conversation went well. They were mutually pleased that things had worked out this way, and the first thing the assistant offered to bring tea to make this morning more pleasant. She chose the most fragrant and unusual flavor. The smell could be heard throughout the hallway, and Ariel immediately appreciated her efforts. Was sure at first that there was no helper here who could treat her normally, but got very lucky, and now she has Violetta. She not only respects her, but she does her job flawlessly, and that's the most important thing. She now has complete confidence in her, and overall is insanely happy to know her. At one point, the maid did not hold back and allowed herself to ask how bad Madam's eyesight was, also to understand how often she needed to be with her and what her duties were. While she was asking that, the girl spilled the tea, and at that moment, everything became clear. She did not continue and even became a little embarrassed. Ariel didn't take offense. She just told me that she sees very badly. She can't see small details or colors, but she can still see something big and very light or dark. They changed the subject very quickly and did it on purpose. Ariel says she has noticed the Count has been incredibly busy since arriving at the estate. That day she has never seen him and has no idea where to find him. The assistant was very surprised, after all. Even she knows this. The fact is that the Count went somewhere far away on the orders of His Majesty, the Emperor. There is no way he could refuse, so did not have time to warn everyone. It had been almost a month since their wedding, and he had never visited her. It seemed as if he was deliberately avoiding seeing her, but perhaps that wasn't the point. They won't be seeing each other anytime soon, which is a good thing, because the color red belongs to those who hate her, and she knows it. Meanwhile, things are not going well at the commercial port, with a lot of problems piling up, further delaying her husband's homecoming. They were on their way here first and were sure they'd be back in just a couple of days, but things went a little off track. The guard of the Gensel family, Bayan, is waiting for his master, and suddenly he is thanked for his work and is asked whether he wants something to eat or not. He's only interested in one thing right now, where the Count is, and it turns out that he's still, in his quarters, discussing some issues. The assistant went straight there, and the guy stopped him, apologized, and asked if he could ask him a favor. He had something for the Count, and it would be nice if Bayan gave it to him. The guy said it was covered with a blue cloth and didn't even tell me what was inside, although the assistant was very interested. Meanwhile, the gentleman hurries to tell someone that the expedition is canceled. He knows it's terrible news, but there's nothing he can do about it. The family assistant Shane is so outraged he can't hold back anymore. He explains that they can't do this now. He gave up his fiance's birthday party for this and has been working without a day off. Meanwhile, another assistant knocked on the door and asked to come in. He didn't even have time to say anything before the master said the same thing to him as he did to the assistant Shane. Bayan doesn't quite understand how this is possible and thinks there's been some kind of mistake. It's so sudden he can't even believe it could be like this. Shane revealed that it was all about the second princess hurting her leg, the same Princess Kudrya, and the princess herself asked to go on this expedition and insisted that no one be late. And in the end, it's all messed up. It's just a mockery of the marriage. Bayan believes that given the nature of the second princess, she will not sit idly by, but such an intervention is too much and it is unclear what they will do now. Mr. absolutely agrees with them. He has been thinking about this for a very long time, but he has not been able to find a solution. It is a very difficult situation, and they have not had anything like this all the time. Instead of sitting down and thinking about it himself, he shifted the responsibility to his aides. They asked for some time to think. though they were sure he would take the initiative, for he understood it so much better. The gentleman went to the window and so-and-so began to think of something. It seemed to the assistants that so-and-so just began to wait for them to suggest everything then. But no. He asked them not to bother and just send a letter back saying, he hopes the princess gets well soon. And also, he asked them to add this. We'll look forward to His Majesty's visit next time, period. In the end, they didn't stay there long, called the carriage, made sure the letter had been sent, and started to rush to Ariel's house. Very curious how he really feels about her. There's a reason the girl feels red energy from him that doesn't mean anything good. If he's up to something bad, she needs to pay attention to everything that seems suspicious. This guy acts as secretive and careful as possible. On the seat and in front of him is something that was handed to him by an assistant from some guy. Nobody knows what's hiding there. And so far, the Count is in no hurry to open anything. Meanwhile, they were already at home. The gentleman did not even greet anyone, immediately asked where his wife was and how she was doing. He was told that the girl had just had dinner and was back in the bedroom. She wasn't doing anything, so she'd be happy to see him. And all of a sudden, the guy hands something to the head maid and asks her to give it to Ariel, and hurry up. It's a very large box and looks like some kind of gift. The woman was very surprised that he doesn't want to take it to her personally and is asking her for it, to which he replies that it would be weird to give a gift after his long absence. He was gone for a month. It would be awkward to give something right after his return. The woman did not remain silent and asked to be allowed to give him advice. In her opinion, in such a situation, it is best to give her a present personally and not to ask someone else to do so. Because if you think about it, it's a little nicer to get a gift from your husband in person than from other hands. That's obvious, but he seems to think a little differently. The Count didn't take long to explain. He simply asked to do what he had repeated several times already, pass on this gift and not waste his time. He has no mood at all. You can see it even without looking. Ava is not upset. She is used to it and understands that he is still kind. Everyone has known for a long time that a gentleman is never honest even with himself. He has remained the same as he was many years ago. Meanwhile, the girls are already admiring the new gift that Eva gave them. They didn't expect anything like this, especially since the guy is coming so early. Ariel has never seen such a beautiful instrument and has no idea how to play it. The girl played them some melody. They did not expect it, and were very surprised that even with such limited abilities, she had such a masterpiece. It was a pleasure to hear it. Ariel saw the helpers pink, which means they really liked everything. They have only good and sincere emotions. Mrs. thanked them for their praise and admitted that there was nothing to brag about. But her mother loved music, and earlier, living in her native house, the girl often repeated after her and learned some things. Veronica asked if the instrument on which the girl was playing had been left in the castle, for everyone thought that the lady had taken it with her. Had to explain that it was for some reasons she wasn't ready to give yet. And at that moment, Ariel seems to realize this emblem is the same as on her instrument. She recognized it immediately and felt it with her hands. It's unclear how the Count knew about it, or maybe it's just a coincidence that can be ignored. As a child, she learned something from people. Yellow means calm, pink means intimacy and affection, blue fear and red anger or contempt, shades of red are any negative emotion. The Count is always full of Scarlet. One can only imagine his hatred of her, which he manages very carefully to conceal. Meanwhile, he comes to dinner and apologizes for keeping her waiting. Had to pretend that she was very happy to see him, even though she had no idea what surprises awaited her today, or what color he would be. For the first time, they didn't talk about anything at all or even look at each other. And then, when it got a little awkward, they had to work something out. He was curious to know if she liked the gift, to which she replied that it was very unexpected and wonderful. To which he says that when he visited the Duke's estate to discuss marriage matters, he heard her playing, and while he listened, the Duke remarked that her instrument was old and should have been bought a new one long ago. He had heard her father admire his daughter's talent many times. The girl was very surprised, because it was kind of strange. Usually he always didn't care about it at all. Husband said something else that he passed by a tool store on the way back yesterday and then remembered this episode. At first glance, everything looks fine. He tries to please her, gives her gifts, and not just any ordinary ones, but special ones that remind her of her mom. If it wasn't for that business trip, he would have wanted to hear his wife play again yesterday, so he's going to ask to do it as soon as it's convenient for her. The girl didn't really hear what he had just said. She was more interested in how her father could want to give her such a gift, and even more interested in talking to the Count about it. He had personally asked her to play less at home. He didn't like it very much, and it only distracted him. Something was wrong here. I really want to believe the Count's words, but at the same time, given his red color, I'll have to check something out. Words that he had given her an instrument and wanted to hear her play it. She would like to believe that at least some of them were true. Perhaps the Count did not hate her as much as she might think. But until she was sure of that, it was too early to think so. It is very important to keep your distance, because he may not turn out to be the person you think he is, so there is more doubt than trust. It's lucky she has the ability to see people's colors, something others would want. The girl did not keep him waiting. She brought the instrument and played the tune that seemed to her the most successful, and he in the meantime was drinking tea and seemed very mysterious. If only she could see his face at that moment, it would be much calmer, but as it is, nothing is clear. Ariel tries to smile and be even thinking about the fact that at this moment, he could be looking at her with his eyes and she wouldn't even recognize it. Just for a second, when she looked in his direction, she saw the red color getting paler and paler. It meant that the Count was calm now, and he was enjoying everything. She does not stop playing, trying to hold on as long as possible not to upset him, and at least once to see him green or yellow color. It's her little dream, which no longer seems something impossible. Amazingly, Ariel remembers by heart the lyrics to a song that her mom used to sing. She can never forget it and can sing it without mistakes, even in her sleep. I wonder when he asks her to stop, because it's not easy to sing for a long time. She hasn't done it in a long time, and she's getting a little tired. Suddenly, her husband rises from his seat, comes closer to her, and even decided to touch her with his hand, which she noticed very well. It still has the same very intense red color that never fails to scare you and make you very nervous. You can expect anything from him, given the fact that the color is getting more and more saturated. It turns out things are a lot more interesting than they seem. The guy noticed that she picked that song that has hidden meanings. It has lyrics about love, betrayal, and all the things he could do to her. As soon as she said the word betrayal, he immediately asked her to stop, as if he understood everything. Her husband complimented her a lot, didn't say anything directly, just kept quiet and said it was great. He felt uncomfortable with the song, and Ariel just wanted to see how he would react to it. In the end, she got it, and the guy didn't understand why he didn't want to listen to the song any further. Very strange. But at first he didn't say anything, and then he hinted that he liked to listen to more upbeat songs, so he asked me to play them better. Ariel pretended not to understand what he didn't like and offered to sing something else. The guy immediately refused and said that next time, now he had a lot of things to do and he couldn't stay with her. It went very calmly and she can still feel his red color. It's very stressful, especially when he gets closer. It's hard to communicate with a person when she can't even see his face, what his emotions and impressions are. He suddenly decided to stay and said he'd rather listen to her voice during a normal conversation, because he knows how hard it is to sing two songs at once. He himself once tried to start, but it didn't work out well. It became unclear what to talk about next. They have no common topics, and after the wedding, nobody got to know each other better. They have no common interests, at least not yet. The girl doesn't know anything, and neither does he. We'll have to get over this awkwardness, and next time it will probably be much easier. At the time he asked to hear her voice, Ariel thought maybe she was very wrong in the first place and even felt ashamed that maybe she was. She smiled and told it like it really is. The girl doesn't know what he's into, what a husband and wife usually talk about, and apologized if he gets too bored with her. To which he replies that she has such a beautiful voice that he would be times to hear any story from her life, funny or just interesting. For example, he offered to discuss what her life was like on the estate before his return, what she had time to do, what she liked and what she didn't, even though nothing interesting had actually happened yet. She just had time to meet everyone, went for a few walks. Overall, it was nothing bad, but she didn't feel super happy without him. Maybe since he's already home, they'll have some dates and won't have to sit in her room all the time. She can't tell you that she's always suspected him of something, trying to find out, afraid of him, and still is, doubting whether he's what he seems at first sight. It's all too strange. It's all different from the information I've heard on the graph before. He doesn't show kindness to those he's not interested in. He speaks directly, gets to the heart of the matter, and never wastes time with innuendo or the like. And also, they said he treats girls like they're nothing, acting indifferent to them and most of the people around him. And now he was talking to her so coolly, listening to every word. Ariel was completely confused. She has no idea who is in front of her. Usually people who are kind for no reason always leave a deep wound in her soul before disappearing forever. For many years, the girl had come to realize this simple truth, and when she felt the unexpected kindness again, she tensed, ready to receive a blow from him. It's impossible to put into words how she feels now. She has absolutely mixed feelings. There is both fear and a desire to get to know him better. All the good and bad are mixed together. And at some point, patience just wasn't an option. Ariel said that if he wanted to say something, he'd better do it right now, instead of going around and around and around. She doesn't like to think that someone is trying to be nice to her just because of pity. Of course, she is pleased, but wants to know how he really feels about her. So, for the first time, she asked him to tell her what he needs. She is no longer a young, naive girl who will be hurt by the truth. She is ready for it and promises that she will try to find a compromise even if she hears something very terrible. And then the guy thought her look spoke for itself. I wonder what he would say to that, or would he try to be nice again and hide until the last minute? He says she misunderstood him, and it's a shame she thought about it all this time. Even though she could have discussed it from the beginning, Ariel didn't quite understand what that meant, and at the same time began to hope that she would now know all the answers to all her questions. Her husband asked to hold her hand, and when she took it, he said he had never felt a book of pity before. He's sorry she felt that way, but really, he's never felt that way in all the time he's known her. He's willing to say it so many times, but still, it's not enough for her to finally start trusting him and stop thinking he's something to be afraid of. And then, he says he's long been curious to know how she knows him, what she's heard about him. It's important to him to know what he's like in her eyes. I wonder if that's part of his answer or if the guy just changed the subject on purpose and avoided answering. He doesn't care if it's rumors she's going to tell him, her opinion, or speculation. He just wants to know everything she knows about him. He already knows that people are born into two groups. Some are afraid of him, and some admire him. Ariel, like most people, tends to think of him as the most arrogant aristocrat in high society in the capital, a man who views everything in this world through the prism of profit. This is easier to believe and confirm than the fact that he is the kindest and all that goes with it. When the girl listed all that, I thought he might take it as her personal opinion, so I explained that it wasn't. It was surprising, but he replied without reason that if he really was the Jansel everyone keeps talking about, who would choose to marry the person who would be most helpful? His bride could be the second princess, but definitely not Ariel. It all sounds very true. But still, I want to hear something else from him. They have never talked so sincerely. I want to believe that everything will be clear in the end of the conversation. A second princess named Kudreja. From childhood, she had been pursuing Romaldo, wanting to marry him. Any nobleman knew that. Moreover, to meet Romaldo, who was then a student at the academy, the princess would sneak out of the imperial palace. Of her strange behavior and the bravery of Romaldo, who ordered the guards to seize her, have given rise to many legends. Guy wasn't lying, however. The reason he gave up the princess and married her is quite different. We can assume it's about some kind of deal made with Duke Aegis, but that still needs to be verified. And with any luck, he'll tell us about it now. And yet Ariel still thinks marrying the second princess would be his best option. But this pattern on the musical instrument makes her very confused. She's sure she knows exactly what it is, and maybe her doubts aren't false. There was only one more time to ask his question. Little chance it would look him on emotion and he would tell the truth. But he answered exactly as he had at the beginning. The girl doesn't even think of giving up, she's sure. We can think of a way and test it soon. Can a person with a red color say they treat her very well? Didn't marry because of pity? Or for some other reason than love? There must be some explanation for that. She doesn't plan on ending this conversation. There are still some questions he's going to have to answer whether he wants to or not. Ariel asks a question about a musical instrument and says she recently found out he bought it for her, and he replies that he did. Accordingly, the time of the second question, how did it happen and did it really? He was sold this instrument in a special store, Romaldo, that just randomly chose and bought what he liked. To find out about it was very important. And now, one should check it out sometime to see if it was true or not. Ariella thanked him and thanked him again for the gift. I wonder what will happen next, and if she has any more ideas and traps for this secretive and strange man. The girl said she was good with instruments in general, but he took it differently. As if she didn't like this particular instrument and suggested ordering something new, she stopped him and asked him to hear her out to the end. Ariel is in awe of this instrument and doesn't even know how to describe it. If she could only see it, she would probably admire it all day long. It's still unclear where this conversation is going, but she's acting very confident, as if she's in control, even though she can't even see his face or how he reacts to her questions. He insists so strongly that he chose the instrument simply on looks and doesn't even know what made it so special to her. In that case, since he himself had returned to the topic, the girl was a little embarrassed, but still asked him to take a look at something. She would be happy to show him everything now. The guy doesn't know what's in store for him yet and has no idea what it's all about, why she's reacting so strangely to the design of the tool. Ariel points to the number 45 engraved on this instrument, but it doesn't seem to mean anything to him yet. The girl smiled and told him that it was the name of the craftsman who made the instrument, but so far the guy wasn't intimidated. He didn't quite understand what it was about. Instead of thinking about what she said, the Count thought that if it was a famous artisan, then the instrument was of quality. But she replies that it was more than that. And also he is a guardian of the forest in the northeast, and she attends to crafting in her spare time, making tools his hobby. So he makes them without much request, and the quality isn't the best either. It was obvious that this was not all she wanted to say to him. She decided to stop in time so that she might not make a mistake. Romaldo makes it sound like he's interested in discussing it, though really, they'd rather talk about relationships than some tool for over an hour. The only thing he could answer out of politeness was that he didn't think she was that good at it, when suddenly he decides to admit something, that what he said about the purchase earlier was a lie. And this is interesting, so that he wouldn't be embarrassed. The girl explained that she wouldn't question him, but he went ahead anyway, and confessed that he had deceived her, but not out of malice aforethought. A man who watched him listen to her play gave this custom-made instrument to her, and it's disgusting. If he had been honest and told the whole story, she would have misunderstood him. Ariel, it's too bad the truth wasn't horrible, but just a little different. He was just watching her at the Duke's house and meant no harm. The girl didn't notice it and said she forgave him. Ariel is very sorry that the conversation looked like that. She told me that she just thought he hated her and now suddenly gives her such a nice gift. It seems suspicious, and was the reason for this conversation. Receiving it, and hearing from his lips that he had no hatred for her, she was much happier, as she had wanted to be from the first day of the wedding. And if he doesn't mind, she wants to touch him right now, because she's never been able to before. The Earl knelt down and took her hand, and began to help her touch his face. This was so that she wouldn't be shy and take her hand away too soon. He himself was insanely pleased to realize that she wanted it, that she had feelings for him. Though maybe that was still part of her plan. It's important to remember that too. The girl promised herself she wouldn't rest until she was sure of him. He let her touch him as much as she wanted, even until morning, sounded very sweet, and for a second, Ariel even forgot who he might be in reality. It would be in some unusual sensations that had never happened before. It was like he became much more genuine and really wanted to believe him. His red color hasn't gone anywhere, but she doesn't pay attention to it, trying to see it as pink. A good color, at least for now. She wants to enjoy the moment and not think about anything else. They look so good together. If it weren't for all these problems, they could be the best and most exemplary couple ever. There's nothing suspicious in his eyes, and if Ariel hadn't seen that red color, she never would have questioned him. She even had thoughts that maybe that red color could mean something else, and she was so nervous for nothing. Her hand starts to move down a little lower. Her fingers are already near his lips, and it seems it wasn't by accident. The fact that he's not reacting or trying to move her hand suggests that he's fine with it. How suddenly he did it after all and hinted that he wasn't ready for that. Or maybe he'd misunderstood her at all. He was very much afraid that it might mean something else. Not at all what they thought it meant. So as not to frighten the girl, he had to take his hand back. Do it as carefully and gently as possible so she wouldn't take offense. Though he failed, Ariel was a little uncomfortable with it. Of course he didn't go anywhere and keep quiet. The guy corrected the situation and asked if she liked it or not. The girl is silent, as if something had frightened her. She sits absolutely still, stares at one point, and says nothing. Turns out she had just realized what he looked like, and that touch made sense. She wanted to feel his face and touch wherever she could. So she drew a portrait in her head of what her husband looked like. She felt that his upper lip was sharply blackened. He has deep-set eyes with double eyelids creating a kind look. Also, thick eyebrows making him seem determined. Considering the bridge of his nose and the space between his eyebrows, he's very handsome. It's like she's seen him for real. Now I see what the point of it was. It's very good that the guy stopped in time and thought that she wouldn't have hinted at something like that. The Count admitted that he had received countless compliments before. He reacted very calmly, and most of the time, he just didn't care. But her words pleased him very much. He even felt out of place. And he really wants her to tell him that more often, so it's like they're good, but she's not definitively convinced that he's totally safe. After that, the girl tried to describe it even more, and he was interested to see if she would guess something or not. It was very interesting, fun, unusual, and interesting. What surprised him the most was the fact that she named the color of his eyes and didn't get it wrong. He was a little confused about it and thought it was more likely that she had just heard it from someone else, such as the assistants. And then she says it's weird that his eyes look a lot like Angelina's, even though the guy has no idea who Angelina is. The girl laughed and said it was her cat. Then, about half an hour passed and finally, it was time to rest. Today had been a very busy day, and of course, not without another nap. She started to see her assistant, who went into the forest and decided to pick some beautiful flowers to decorate the room. The problem was that they grew very high, and it took a lot of effort to get even a single branch. Lucky that she remembered and took a pair of scissors with her. It was much easier that way. Then lucky to find a bush where those flowers can be plucked much lower down than on a tree. This year, everything bloomed much earlier than usual, and she loves it. She loves to create some beautiful bouquets and decorate everything around her. And meanwhile, the girl is watching it all from the sidelines. The helper said she could handle it herself, and suddenly, that tree she climbed suddenly starts to crack and falls to the floor. Before she could get down from there, she was crushed by a tree within seconds. It was just awful, and it felt like it was a dream. Just a moment and the helper was no longer alive. The tree was so huge that there was no chance of survival. Ariel wakes up in tears. She hates such dreams and is afraid something similar might happen in real life. She became afraid of her assistant and wanted to control her for the rest of the day. She had forgotten the last time she had woken up in a good mood, to dream about something good and to be able to spend the whole day without fear that something bad would happen. She immediately got a headache, so bad she couldn't stand it, so much so that she almost fainted. A very long time ago, her dreams were very peaceful. There was nothing wrong with them, and sometimes she didn't even want to wake up to enjoy the beautiful things longer. But unfortunately, the good dreams always last too short. Unlike the bad ones, most are always followed by nightmares. Ended up having to focus on something else and think less about the bad stuff so as not to ruin the mood early anyway. When she had free time, she could remember it and figure out what it might have meant. First, you need to prevent an incident with the helper. You need to make sure that she stays out and is safe. It seems that in the dream, a tree branch fell on her and the girl is not mistaken. Everything was exactly like that. Although usually she often forgets some moments, they seem to be erased from her memory. And in the meantime, the Count is already busy with his own affairs. He has gathered all his assistants and is hurrying to tell me some very pleasant news. He is sending one of them to the capital for some time and also has no idea how long it will last. A week, a month, or a few months. It's not up to him. The aide resented it and reminded him that he is his temporary representative and not his deputy, and asked him to take that into consideration. He did not understand what questions there could be, because if he asked for something, it was very important and necessary. The aide says that since assuming his position, the Lord has always been in the capital, and here suddenly he decided to stay and send someone else. I just heard my father say that there used to be an Ernicanis bird in the south, and he also said a very strange thing about some creatures mistaking the first one they see for their parent. Ernicanis bird is one such creature. One may take advantage of the occasion when the real parent is not in the nest, and appear before the hatching chick first. Strangely enough, the chicks of such false parents, taking them as temporary guardians. It's all very interesting, but still, no one wants to do it, does not understand why this story, because he understands that the gentleman is just too lazy to leave and shifts responsibilities to others. Although if you think about it, he just compared himself to a bird worried about when it's his turn to fly away. So it's kind of weird, and at the same time, it doesn't make sense. The guy did not remain silent and suggested that maybe the gentleman just did not want to leave because he was worried about his wife and tried to hint at it. In response, the gentleman just laughed and almost no response. And meanwhile, the other also joined in the conversation and reminded us that, owing to the downpour last night, the bridge had sagged. At least we should have to go before 6 o'clock in the evening, for it might be dangerous later on.